This is Brian Urlacher, and make sure you tune in to Tailgate Talk with DC and Zay for your NFL talk on 95.9 FM and AM 610, The Sports Animal.
Green Bay, I mean, you saw he had possession of the ball. There was an overhead shot. He was down, had possession. They still give it. It's like, wow, it's getting – I don't like going down that road, but it's hard not to at least think about it because there's just so many things like it's caught on camera. You can't fix it. I don't know. It is interesting though when it happens for the Chiefs' favor. It's like it's a hot topic.
It's super bad because it seems like it happens for them every single week. And I think we're in a time, right, with all the technology that we have. There's no excuse. If there's a call, I think every call should be challengeable. Now, everyone says, okay, well, what do you want to just stop and challenge every single? I mean, do you want to stop the game for every single penalty? And it's like, no, you can treat it the same way as you treat challenges. If they're not just going to be so quick to throw a challenge flag out if you're stripped of a penalty.
Does it blow your mind that NFL refs are not full-time employees?
Yeah, but I think it also saves them. It also makes it shows a little room of gray area, or it allows you to have your own little conspiracies because it's like you guys have each other's back. You guys are a union.
It shocks me when you think about the value of the NFL. Okay. 32 teams, you put the value of those teams alone, it's over 100 billion. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You can't get full-time refs that only focus on one thing, refereeing NFL games. They leave too much gray area when they do that. You have to have dedicated referees, otherwise everything will be questioned.
Yeah, and everything is getting questioned, and every ref is getting questioned. And I saw the stat before the game that there's a ref in there where the Chiefs were 6-0 when he's reffing.
Oh.
Number one, it's kind of hard to look at it that way because they don't really lose too often. So I feel like there's a lot of refs that haven't been the referee when the Chiefs lose. But at the same time, Mahomes is look, the whole fan base of the entire NFL has put you on the spotlight for being whether it's a flopper or getting calls from the refs. So to see him get pushed in the back barely and like flop out of bounds.
Oh, it was bad. That was the worst flop I've seen in a long time. Any sport.
Yeah, it confirms the heel switch, and in my opinion.
I can feel that, but I will say this. And it kind of goes back to Belichick and Brady.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the rules so well that you know where to exploit the loopholes, that is part of the game. If you are a coach and you know how this game is played so well that you can say, hey, this is the line and this is how close we can get, that is kind of why you have a dynasty going on right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, in some respects, you look at it like, oh, what is he doing? It's flop. It's like, he's following the rules. It's as irritating as it is. There is an element where you just have to push as hard as you can. If you want to win 3 championships in a row, you have to push every line as hard as you can.
Yeah, and I agree, but in Mahomes,
but it's frustrating. I mean,
it's very frustrating.
Aggravating. It's sometimes it just bewilders me. Like how is it that you have a frame on national TV showing very clearly what something is happening and have the call go the other way? It is for how much money is on these games. I mean, just think about the bettors. At this point, it's all about the gambling. There are billions of dollars on all of these games. You can't get a call right.
Yeah.
I shake my head like, what? I personally would not bet on the NFL right now because I just don't necessarily.
It feels like you're betting with a video game.
It feels like the outcome could be tilted by a factor that I may not even know
is out of your control. And it reminds me back to when James Harden was scoring 45 points and 12 rebounds and 13 assists a game, and you're wondering how in the world is this guy doing it? And he's shooting 20 free throws, and it's because he literally, he said even Kobe said he read the rule book from, front to back.
As you should.
Yes. And I think James Harden was one of those guys where imagine if he was winning rings when he was doing that, when he's just getting to the line. It irritated people, but he wasn't winning championships. So it was just something that was slightly irritating. But in the Chiefs case, they're like, they just lost one game the entire season. So I think that is where the outrage is coming from, because you can't be winning and, doing the flop.
It's a very bad look. I just, when I saw that, I felt like my instant reaction was just, what is this? And I feel like when I went online, everyone seemed to have a similar reaction to that.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. We got that going on, and then how about the Washington Commanders versus the Lions?
Oh my.
I feel like
that one was a little more predictable because we saw all the injuries and we saw how at the end of the season, while they were still playing well, I don't know.
You think that one's predictable?
You couldn't come out and say they're going to, give up 40 points.
No.
But when you looked at all the matchups, I felt like that was the one that, if you're going to get an upset, that felt like the one. They, a very hot offensive with a good defensive side going into, environment. It's Detroit is a tough place to play these days, but still, like, you have the week off. I don't know. They had the momentum going in, and it just felt like if you had to pick an underdog, that was the one that I looked at.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I don't know, and this is never going to happen, but I want to be the one to bring it to the spotlight. No other team is ever going to get the treatment that the Cowboys get. The Detroit Lions just had a vintage from start to end, the whole season had a textbook vintage
15 wins.
Yes, they had a Dallas Cowboys season. They dominated all season, but the difference is for some reason all season, although we're watching them win in the regular season, no one ever said, "Hey, let's wait and see what they do in the playoffs." Everyone, including me at one point, because it's convincing to look at, but everyone is so convinced that the Lions were just the best team. They're going to steamroll everybody. They got everybody convinced that's the case. And then they go into the playoffs, get smoked by a rookie quarterback. He's not just a rookie quarterback. He's a great quarterback. But you go in and you get embarrassed by the Commanders. And today, rightfully so, and all week, we're going to hear about Jay Daniels this, Jay Daniels that, Dan Quinn this, Dan Quinn that. But no one's going to look at the Lions and say, were they fakers this whole time? No, yes, they've had injuries, but all teams have injuries. And even with the injuries, they were still favored. No one had them losing. We're all expecting them to be playing either the Bills, Ravens, or Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And the Commanders go in there and put a spanking on them. If this game is week 13, I highly doubt this is the outcome. So I think it's time. I'm not a big Lions guy. I'm not a big Lions fan. I don't like the way they embarrassed us earlier in the season. I don't like Dan Campbell's attitude when it comes to my Dallas Cowboys. So I definitely have to bring that to the plate. Like, when are we going to give the Lions the Dak Prescott treatment? When are we going to look at Jared Goff and say, you just had a meltdown?
I think it's coming soon. The difference, though, here's the thing. The Cowboys had championships, so it always goes back to the 90s.
Okay, so they're being compared. You think they have a higher bar set?
Exactly. Once they went on that run and they won those championships, then it did become championship or bust for that fan base. And Detroit's never been there. So that's why I think they're easing into it. But if they run off 3 or 4 seasons like this, you're going to hear a lot more of that comparison, I think.
I hope so. I feel like it's only fair, but Dan Campbell did good. And then how about in that game, you could make a strong argument that Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, the OC and the DC for the Lions, you can make an argument they got outcoached. And they are 2 of the hottest prospects right now as far as the head coaching search goes on. Now, of course, they can be interviewed much quicker now.
Yes, they can. And their names come up with every job. So it's really interesting that they're suddenly available on Tuesday, I guess is the way that works. But it's like, was your mind somewhere else? Were you really thinking about this game for the last 2 weeks, or were you taking calls on the down low?
Yeah. And
let's be honest. There's no way he was sitting in his house just reading through the playbook.
I think what they did is they maybe rushed, like they hurried up and got their current, game plan finished for maybe that day or that week. And then I do believe that their mind drifted. Now, is that why I think they lost? No, but Ben Johnson did call he called a couple of trick plays that maybe he's used to them working, but it cost them a few times. They're down 10 and he goes for a trick. I get it. Like, you want
in that spot, you were having a hard time moving the ball. I get that, but Is that the
Yeah.
call you would really make 100 times out of 100? I have a hard time with that. And that it goes back to the whole process of a coaching search. Like, the best teams have the best coordinators. And so those are the hot names every single year. So this comes up every year. And it's actually almost funny that the Chiefs really, you don't hear that about their coaches. They have something good going on there where they don't have to worry about losing guys every year. But outside of that team, it's like every year the best teams are losing their coordinators. And it's just such an uphill battle. If you're the Lions next year and you have a new OC and DC, I mean, how in the world are you going to win 15 games again?
Yeah.
It's crazy how much turnover goes on with these top tier teams.
Yeah, I tell you what though, they definitely they caught lightning in a bottle, quite literally, with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Oh,
and that
dude's awesome. He is so good.
He's like a twitchier, and I think he's like a better version of Alvin Kamara. Now I know it's going out on a big limb saying he's just better than Alvin Kamara, but I think he's on that trajectory.
Well, you make a good point because Alvin's first couple of years were sick.
Yeah,
and it really came back to the fact that you could pass to him and he could run the ball effectively in both ways. And you are so right, because he does look like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
he could definitely be the next, dual threat guy, especially with the way they play offense. But again, it's like you get a new offensive coordinator. How are you going to use a guy like that?
Yeah,
especially if you've never had a guy like that before.
Yeah, he just accelerates like effortlessly. And then today we've got the Bills and the Ravens. And last week, just to go over really briefly with your Broncos, they started out the way that they felt they had to start out.
When they came and they got that big touchdown, I'm like, oh, whoa, wait a second. They were listening to us.
Yeah.
And then they just stopped playing offense. They were just done with that.
Yeah, I feel like
I will say, though, we talked about the refs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When it was 4th and 2 and they got that touchdown pass.
Yeah.
And I try and take off the Broncos glasses on this, but when I saw him, the ball was still moving in his hand when his back leg was touching the line. You could see it over and over and over again. And I don't think the Broncos win if that call goes the other way, but that's a touchdown on 4th down. That could be a huge momentum shift. And I don't want to blame the refs, but I'm like, how is it that I'm seeing it this way? Everyone I'm talking to is seeing it in a similar way, but the refs are calling the exact opposite. It's just maddening. Like, what is a catch? Why is it so? Why is the rule definition so loose? It's amazing to me.
Yeah, and I thought a couple years ago they did a thing where the refs were getting influence from some guys in New York who were looking at it as well. So I'm wondering, like, where is that at?
Well, think about this, and this is, I guess, the conspiracy side of things. But you have one player on offense that has a headset. Okay, They say it's just to hear, but the idea that you could also be mic'd up and not have two-way communication, I just don't buy it. You could very easily put that in. You have one person on defense with that, but the refs, especially the main ref, has a direct connection to New York, and you never hear the ref audio.
Yeah,
Seriously, why aren't we ever hearing that? How do we know what's going on? We don't. And for all we know, there's someone in New York watching a game, maybe multiple screens, and saying, hey, you missed this. Hey, call this. You just don't know. And the fact that there's so many calls that lead you down that road, I don't know. There needs to be more transparency, because this is a gambling game. There's gambling experiences in the stadiums now. Okay. If that's going to be a major part of it, there has to be transparency about how it's officiated, because it's
getting out of control.
It is. It really is.
And I think a big reason also, and it helps that the refs are not, this is why I believe they're going to stay part-time and they're not going to become full-time, because the refs there's got to be accountability. Like, there has to be some sort of repercussion. The players, the league is so quick to find players if they speak about the refs, but no one holds the refs accountable. No one says, okay, like the NFL loves to come out the next day. Oh, the NFL officiators report that this should have been this call instead of this one. Or I remember the day even after the Des Caudet thing, the NFL says after reviewing the call should have been reviewed and confirmed a catch. And it's like, it's too late for that. Like you said earlier, the bettors have already lost their money. The game's over. The winning team's already celebrated. You can't take that away from them at this point. So no one cares. Like, we don't care to hear that you guys should have called this. You should have got it right at the time. It's too much
Absolutely.
technology.
It doesn't take 18 hours to figure out if you got the call right.
Exactly.
You should be able to do it in 18 seconds.
Exactly. If that. But when we get back, we're going to highlight a lot more of these topics because we got Red Zone, and I got some good topics for you to rip off in Red Zone, as well as DC for Chalk It Up. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after we pay the bills. You're listening to Tailgate Talk on 95.9 FM and AM 610, the Sports Animal.
Dirty Boys present Fill in the Holes.